Hi, Lori.
Good morning.
How are you? So great to have you on the show.
Oh my gosh, an honor. So happy to be here.
Lori, there's so much for us to talk about today. And it's almost like where to start because I could jump in on several different lines, but I'm going to start where I start with all my guests, which is asking you the question, what does it mean to you to live your most extraordinary life?
Oh my gosh. It brings me to the famous quote of Mary Oliver and tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious life.
Ugh.
That's what I think of.
So
And
let me just dive in a little bit more. When you think of the word extraordinary, what comes to mind for you?
something so far beyond the ordinary, as though we were made for something special, something unique that only we can fulfill on this earth. And that motivates me.
It gives me goosebumps
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're here for a mission. You're here for a reason.
A mission and a reason and a purpose, even if we've lost touch with that purpose, even if we don't think we're that unique or that special, we are.
All right. So at the core of this, you and I have a really special bond because we are both ladies from Maine. And no matter where you go in the world, you do not take the Maine out of the girl, do you?
You do not. We are down to earth, you know, solid girls from Maine, and that is really unique.
It's one of those things that no matter where I am, what country I go to, where I'm living at that particular point of time, when I think of home, and I've lived outside of Maine for now 30 years, I'm a girl from Maine. And there's something so authentic and real and deep in our roots about that. And I was so pleasantly surprised to find out that you also were from Maine. I was like, I need to speak to Lori Pine. We need to talk. But I'm going to jump in real quick here and say what I'm really curious about, Lori, is if you could tell us more about your journey to becoming, I love this title, the Joy CEO. I mean, what a fantastic title that you've come to. And there's got to be a great story behind this. So I was hoping that you could actually take us on a bit of a journey on how Lori Pine became the Joy CEO.
Yeah. As with anybody who becomes something that she's really embodying and something that she finally loves, it's a tale of two cities. There was a time when I wasn't at all joyful. In fact, it was just the opposite. I was this young girl from rural Maine, hell bent to get out, hell bent to see the world, to prove myself, to make something of myself. And, you know, that ambition, that motivation to climb the corporate ladder, to, make a mark, to prove to the world, but kind of more importantly, to prove to myself that I was somebody, I was something, really set me on a bit of a path of destruction. As much as it did set me on a path of success, they were really paralleled. Um, and so I found myself with an eating disorder.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself married to somebody that I would ultimately divorce and raise two little boys on my own. Um, I would find myself trying to juggle a big corporate job with two little boys as a single mom. I would find myself, you know, moving 7 times. I had a lot of corporate moves, and kind of, it seemed like every time I got sick of the kitchen wall paint, it was time to move anyway. So there was no point in getting attached. And there's so many blessings in all of that. Um, but there were some dark times,
Yeah.
and it really led me on a journey of self of how do I start to really take care of myself and go inward, because that's where I'm really going to find the joy. That's where I'm going to do the work that will let me change not only circumstances, but change my thinking, change my, and ultimately change my life.
You know, it's so interesting because we've had such similar starts in life coming from rural Maine, from small towns, with this sense that to become something more than where we started was the goal, and that our worth was outside of us. It was in that achievement, right? That
Yes.
when you say you were on this path of achievement and it brought a lot of blessings, because I know that well, but also a path of self-destruction, it resonates at such a deep level for me as well, because I was on that path as well. And it's amazing that we were at some points of our lives before this moment, which this is the first time we met this year in 2023, but our paths have crossed throughout the years, and we have been on very similar journeys of figuring out that all that we had been out to achieve and do, and frankly we did, wasn't what was going to actually bring us joy.
That's exactly right. All of those external achievements, titles, accolades, awards, the joy was not in those. I
It
thought it would.
felt good, right? It
Oh,
felt
yeah.
good.
Mm-hmm.
And it opened doors that otherwise would never have been open. So we needed to go on those journeys. But when was it for you? I often talk about, for me, the first time where I was really cognizant of the fact that my path was not working the way I intended it to, the way I thought it was going to, like work really, really hard, climb, work. And happiness was on the other side of that. When I really got the first glimpse, I had just come back from overseas and I was in my mid 20s. And it was like this whole recognition that I was on this collision course for disaster because my inner world was so chaotic, and my outside world looked like I was like the it girl and I was achieving all these things. When did that realization first come into play for you?
So I think that there were glimpses of it, certainly. But I might have been a lot more stubborn than you and like, I can fix this, I can do this, I can keep going. And it
That's
really
the main in you.
that hustle, that grit, that I can fix this. You know, it really wasn't for me until about a year and a half ago when it was a collision. Um, and you know, I had been in survival mode for so long, you know, raising these boys, 7 years of single mom. I did remarry very happily ever after. It's such a great story. But a year and a half ago, I'm in this corporate VP role, and we're in the middle of a global pandemic. All, you know, all barricades break loose with the business and supply chain. And I'm now working these crazy hours just trying to keep up. And I have a team who's all over the country. They have young children, no daycare, you know, everybody's just trying to survive. And I have two teenage boys. One was a senior at the time, one was a sophomore. And my oldest son was graduating in 2020, and my youngest we had just moved him to a small private school. He had been struggling in a very large public high school, and so it became very apparent to me in that time when my youngest really struggled. He did not do well in a Zoom classroom
Mm.
environment. He didn't leave his bedroom for weeks, if not months.
So you
And
have
then
that whole lack of connection and distance.
yes.
Yeah.
And then I was so busy with the work that I wasn't present. I wasn't available to help him. And then fast forward to September, his brother, and they're the best of friends, left for college.
Mm.
And so now my youngest really started to spiral into a bit of a depression. And I was aware, but again, I was still consumed by the work and the busyness and the all that I had going on. um, that when my son came home, my oldest son came home for Thanksgiving, he walked by my office and he said, "Mom, we saw you more when you traveled every week. and you're sitting right here in the house with us. And it was one of those moments of complete clarity, like a dagger to the heart. And I got it. Like in that moment, I got it.
When you realize the things that are most important in your life are now at risk because these boys that you've worked so hard to love and help raise are now realizing that your physical presence is there, but your emotional presence is not because
Yeah.
you are so tied up in trying to keep your job, your business going during these hard times. It is such a familiar theme. So many people thought they were working hard before the
Yeah.
pandemic. And then you're like, oh God, I'm home. I'm no longer commuting and I'm working 12, 14 hours a day
Yeah.
versus maybe the 9 or 10 I had before. It's worse. And I'm
Mhm.
physically here, but I'm not at all emotionally present for anyone. It's incredible. So tell us a little bit about, so you have this realization, you recognize something has got to give.
Yeah.
Take us from that moment to you're now deciding that that's it. You're going on a new path and you're the Joy CEO. Because that's
So
amazing turnaround from that
it's,
moment.
yes, it is. So um, I have a tremendous amount of faith, and I have a mom who's in heaven. And I have this philosophy that if you have a mom in heaven, you likely have a bit of a super angel. So I call on her quite a bit. And I felt like I had a very finite period of time with Bryce left at home, with my youngest son left at home. And if I didn't do something radically different, I would have significant regrets. Like I might be visiting him in a rehab, or I
Right.
might, like something was going to go significantly awry. And so I started having conversations with my husband that said, I think I need to resign and leave this job and stay at home for the next year and a half. And it was really out of any of my vernacular to be a stay at home mom. I had never been a stay at home mom, but here at age 17, I was now going to be a stay at home mom. And so, God bless him, he was in full support. And that's what I did. So, by April of 2021, I had hired an executive coach to help me with kind of my planning, my mapping, what was I going to do. And I resigned. And I said to Bryce, I'm a stay-at-home mom. And his response was priceless. He's like, now? Really? Now? I'm 17.
I'm 17. I'm going to be leaving soon.
Yeah. And I
Better
said,
late
oh,
than never.
right. It's you and me, buddy, for the next, year and a half. And what happened was miraculous. It was
Mm.
miraculous for him. His grades went from like a 1.3 GPA to his senior year. He got a 4.0 with
Oh,
academic excellence.
wow.
He became the captain of his lacrosse team. We found a small college in Maine for him to go to. He's playing lacrosse for his college. Esteemable acts build esteem. I talk to all of my clients about this. I talk to my children about this. When you take small actions that build your esteem, you then feel good about yourself. And that's exactly what happened for Bryce. Small actions helped his esteem, which helped his confidence, and he started to feel really good about himself. He had
But let me
friends.
interject here because, yes, I understand that Bryce had to take those actions, but had you not taken the action that you took, that might never have happened. So it started with you.
Yes, yes, I was definitely like the pinball machine. I was like the
You're the
what got
catalyst.
going.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes,
do you think it's because he saw you, what I would say is probably your journey to radical self-care? You did something that was probably completely out of character because you're responsible and you have always been a breadwinner and you had this really tremendous career. And you said, whoa, I got to step outside of this role and these hats, and I need to focus on being a present mom for my child. And for him to see this, wow, she's letting go of this. And a lot of this, let's be honest, our egos and our self-worth are tied up in these titles and these jobs and these careers.
Yes.
This is who we are, in part, but we're also moms. And for you to be able to say, but this is the most important thing right now, and I'm going to be all in, had to have just lifted him and recognized how much he mattered to you.
100%. And that the proof was really in the pudding, that I took such a significant action for him. Yes.
So you then start working with an executive coach. Obviously, you had a passion for coaching, and we've talked a little bit about this because we've had similar experiences as leaders within corporate environments. That natural bond. Again, I think there's a little bit of Maine in that, of wanting to connect with people. And you were doing mentoring and coaching throughout your career. So it almost was, I mean, quite frankly, it is a bit of a natural progression to take that and really lean into that in this new space you found yourself in.
Yes, but what's really important to distinguish here, and what your listeners might be able to really relate to, is it wasn't so obvious to me. So when I went to my coach, I said, could you give me a test or something and tell me what my purpose is? Because it really wasn't obvious to me. And it was an interesting response from my coach. And she said, your purpose is within you. It's your gifts. It's the things that you're naturally inclined to do that you could do for hours, whether you were getting paid or not. And I'm telling you, that was such a game changer for me, because I was really, again, looking for something external, some sort of validator outside of me, really for somebody to say, oh, here's like your SWOT analysis, and based on this, let me compute you'd be good in, these 3 professions. And that's not how it works. It's as though we come to this life with a toolbox, and everything we need to be successful in this life is already packed in the toolbox. We just have to go digging around in the toolbox and, take out the tools and say, okay, I'm going to try this one today.
Yep. We have to unearth those gifts. Like they're already there.
That's right. And so it was a really powerful moment for me. And now with the clients that I work with, they're able to have the same experience, because I can take them through those exercises that say, no, let's start to look for a breadcrumb trail. Let's start to look for where you're passionate, because we all have these blind spots.
We have these blind spots, I think, and let me know if you agree, is we end up very quickly in life starting to adopt and fit into these belief systems that we inherit, that are handed down, right? Even like the career choices that we make early on, where we go to school, when we get married, who we marry, all are sort of based not because of how you necessarily feel from an inside perspective out, but because you've adopted a set of beliefs, and we're kind of walking the path that everyone else is walking. And until you get to that point where push comes to shove and you start to realize, I got to let go of that belief system that's no longer serving me, and take that layer off and take another one, then you start to realize, oh, wait, in here, inside of me, all that I've been looking for is here all the time.
100%. Yes.
I wish we had the, for anyone listening who's hopefully even younger than we are, take the fast elevator and start there.
Yeah.
Like, please start there. You'll get there much sooner than we did.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't give up the journey, as much as it's been difficult and bumpy at times. Would you say, I wish I could just bypass that part of my life?
No, because even in some of the most painful parts, I learned so much, and there's so many gifts.
Right.
So many gifts.
It's so funny, because as you're going through those hard moments of your life, at least for me, I was always like, why am I going through this? Why do I have to go through this? This feels so hard and heavy. And yet with hindsight of years and what have you, you realize, wow, I would not have learned that lesson, or I would not have realized that I have this gift, or have had that friendship blossom the way that it did in those moments of difficulty. So it is interesting, as much as when we're going through those hard times, we're thinking, man, I would do anything to fast forward and not be in this particular phase of my life. When you look back, you realize I had to go through all of it.
Yeah,
Rarely did people say, yeah, I regret it all and I wish I could do it all over differently. It's usually, yep, that's what I needed to go through to learn what I needed to learn, apparently, right?
exactly right. Exactly right. So I go through all of this with Bryce. I hired this coach. I went and got credentialed in executive coaching for myself. And I was trying to decide who I wanted to coach and what I wanted to coach them on. And it would have been really easy to just coach executives on business, coach entrepreneurs on how to launch a business. I had those skills. I had been doing this for 25 years for some of the biggest brand companies in the world. But that wasn't what was giving me passion. So then I thought about like some of the pain points of things I'd gone through: divorce, single motherhood, challenging times raising a teenager. But then that felt really heavy, and I wasn't sure I could do that all day, every day. And so then I really became inspired about this idea of joy, because my life is joyful today. I've gone through some of that sludge and come out the other side. And so I really started to put pen to paper about, how did I do that? What's the framework? What's that look like? And how could I take somebody else through it? And when I did that work and kind of mapped it out, I was like, there's a recipe here. And I can really help other women, because so many women, especially ambitious, bold, vibrant, corporate or entrepreneurial women who are goal oriented, they are suffering in silence.
Mm-hmm.
I know them. I've been them. And sometimes we don't even know what we don't know. We don't know that we're being dishonest with ourselves. We don't know that we're on this hamster wheel of, lather, rinse, repeat every day. And then the
On
monotony,
autopilot.
right? Autopilot, the monotony just keeps setting in. And we wake up and we've, gained 15 pounds, or our marriage is sexless, or we don't know how to relate to our kids or talk to our kids, or this job that we thought fulfilled us so much. We're like, who cares? Like, it's not bringing us what we thought it did. It might have a great title, it might have a great paycheck, but our insides are empty. And so once I got to a place of joy, then I needed help with the branding. And I met this fabulous woman who does amazing branding work. And she and I together came up with the Joy CEO. And
We're going to give a plug for our friend Malika, because
Malika.
the strangest thing is we both know Malika. And
Yes,
where
we
does
do.
Malika currently live?
Maine.
Maine.
Yes.
It all goes back to, all roads lead back to Maine. So
Yes.
we're going to actually have Malika on at some point here soon, because I think she's got a great story to tell as well. But let's dig into joy, because one of the things, in fact, a friend connected you and I,
Yes.
and this friend's in California, which is even more crazy. And she said, "Oh my gosh, you talk about joy as being like the set point. Like, we should be living joyful lives." And there is this woman who is the CEO, she's the joy CEO. You two need to meet because you talk the same language. And so I've been so fascinated in getting to know you, because it took me a while to realize that, joy isn't something you earn. Joy is something you experience. It is for me, a sense of well-being at all levels of my being. And it's very different than happiness, which can be
Very.
fleeting and external. And so I would love for you, because I know that you could go into some depth on this with me. Talk a little bit about how you think of joy and how it differs from happiness for you.
Yeah. So great question. Joy is earned. Joy becomes your essence, and nobody can take it away from you. It becomes your right because you've passed through some big blocks that were prohibiting you from experiencing this well that lives within all of us. Yet we block that well. We cover it up with fear, with resentments, with lies that we tell ourselves. I'm not good enough.
Yeah, lack of self-worth is a big one.
Oh my gosh. It's one of the biggest traps that we as women especially fall into. And so joy then is, if it springs as a well from within us and it gets blocked, our job is one to admit and be honest that we are blocked and that something's wrong in our life, and then to do the work to unblock it so that we can get back to this spring that comes from within, where we can be joyful no matter what the circumstances, no
Right.
matter if we're walking through a dark storm or we're walking through life and life is full of sunny clouds right now.
Yep. I totally believe that. If you think about when we were children, before we became cognizant of like expectations from society, when we're really small, we're in that state of joy. We don't know any other way of being. Like we have fun playing with nothing, right? I mean, I know you grew up in rural Maine. I had no toys and I played outside in the woods and had the best time and the best childhood as a youngster, bar none, without all of the traps of, all the today's stuff that you can have. And I had a very joyful experience of life very early on. And then it became the weight of like, oh, wait, maybe I don't deserve to be happy. I have to work hard to earn it. And I actually think, for me at least, my perspective is life was always meant to be joyful, but we as humans start to have these doubts, seeds of like, I'm not worthy. I have to work hard and earn it. I do believe like we have to work to cultivate joy for sure, right? It becomes this experience. But I think joy as it's intended, and I do go back to my conversation with you earlier about we're spiritual beings having a human experience. The state of being should be a state of joy, but stuff is going to happen. Real life happens. Tragedies happen. We go through losses and we suffer disappointment and frustration and anger and sadness, all of the things. But that state of joy allows us to, if we let it, acknowledge those things, process those things, and move through them so we don't get stuck.
Yes. So we don't get stuck, so we don't become toxic, so we don't do damage in our life, right? So we can
But
catch
man, wouldn't you have loved to have known this when we were starting out? Because how much of, our adulthood we spend stuck in things because we weren't in those places. We weren't in that recognition of joy is a right. Joy is a place and a mindset and a well-being that everybody has available to them. Yet we've shut it down.
Brene Brown, she's one of my favorites, and she says, we can make a mistake. That doesn't make us a mistake, And I didn't know that for a long, long time. I was really caught up in this trap of perfectionism, and that if I made a mistake, then I was a mistake. And I really needed permission to unthink some of those thoughts that I had, to rewire.
Do you think it's possible? I honestly don't know the answer to this, but do you think it's possible for younger people to take the lessons that we've earned hard life, life happened, and that's how we've learned these lessons, and bypass? Or is this part of like what we all have to go through to learn how to be joyful? Do you think that there are I always wonder, certainly each generation parents differently. We hope that every generation does better than the generation before, but we make mistakes. But they are, at least mine is certainly starting with a level of confidence and sense that he can go do great things based on what he likes to do, which is not something I actually thought was possible. I didn't think work and being happy or joyful were even connected. I thought work was work and work is hard. The idea of that it's based on your gifts and you should lean into where your gifts are sort of evolved over
Yeah.
time, and a
Yeah.
lot of hard lessons learned for me. So I'm curious, like, is this just the way humans operate, or is there a way of getting there quicker?
So I think there's a twofold answer. I think, yes, in some subjects, they're going to get there quicker, right? And some of the things that we learned, like the bottom's going to be raised.
Yeah.
But I think this younger generation has a set of challenges that weren't even available to us. Like this whole social media world didn't even exist when we were their age. And, what that poses for them in terms of, feeling left out, feeling not good enough,
Mhm.
feeling like they need to constantly be keeping up with some sort of an image. We didn't have any of that. We did things in high school and there's no digital record of it. These kids have a different set of challenges than we did. Um, so I think that there's always lessons. I think that we're all in this lifetime, to balance some karma, to do
Yeah.
some things differently, to learn some lessons. And, you know, we can be defiant. We can kick and fight and scream that we don't want to learn them. But at the end of the day, the more accepting we are of where we're at and what there might be to learn, the shorter the pathway to joy is.
So true. I was served up, I'm sure, you can relate a lot of similar experiences to learn the lesson that I clearly didn't learn the first, second, and third time around. So these experiences kept popping up, be like, why am I back in the same spot? Well, because I never fully learned the lesson and embraced it to move forward, to leapfrog the way I could have sooner. So, we all are here where we're at. And I'm grateful to have learned the ones I have at this point, because it really does feel, I know you share this, like a breakthrough. Like, wow, you look back and you're like, I can't believe how far I've come from that person. I just want to go back and say, it's going to be okay. It really is going to be okay. Like, we're going to get there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like how much we endure. And I think you kind of caught on this with the idea of, is I think in particular as women, we adapt to uncomfortable states of being really well, and we almost carry it as a badge of honor, like how well we can still quote unquote perform at high functioning rates, even though the experience of our lives are so uncomfortable on so many levels, versus breaking through the discomfort to another state of being. We just sort of live with the dis-ease
Yeah.
until it starts popping up as disease, right?
Yeah.
An
100%.
eating disorder,
Uh-huh.
or a diagnosis that you weren't anticipating, or a loss, or a failed marriage, until you're like, whoa, wait, this isn't a healthy way of being. And yet
Yeah.
we are almost trained to grin and bear it. You can do it. You're strong.
Yes.
Keep going.
Yes. And that right there in and of itself is the biggest lie. Um, that was the epitome of my first marriage. So concerned about what other people were going to think if I left, so concerned about letting other people down, so concerned about, these two boys and what if I failed them. But all the while, everything about the insides of me was screaming, get out. You got to
Yeah.
leave. You know, this feeling of being stuck. And I would verbalize that. I feel so stuck. And, you know, finally one day push comes to shove and I just said, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Um,
And then you finally recognize that you're like, ah, I put myself through so much for so long
right. For no real
for
reason.
no real reason.
Yes.
You weren't
And
ready. You weren't ready. I mean, that's the
yeah.
reason,
Mhm.
but you realized like that's the only reason you weren't ready.
That's right. That's right. And because I didn't have anybody to kind of show me the way that said,
Yeah.
"Hey, I've done this too. I see you. I see you. I see what you're going through. I see all the Pollyanna white fence BS, you know, white picket fence trying to make everything look pretty and everything look happy and Christmas cards and all the things." No, right? And so I think the first step in joy is honesty. Like, where am I?
Ooh,
What is happening? What's the biggest pain point in my life? Because typically there's one, at least one,
at
but
least one.
we're going to start with the biggest. And where am I being dishonest about the situation?
Hmm. What do you think is could be people's biggest misconception about joy?
That it's happiness.
Hmm.
That if I just do all these things, right? If I throw a party, if I go to the spa, if I get a mani pedi, well, I have joy in my life. Well, all of that is so peripheral and it's not lasting. Real joy is sustainable.
It's a state of being. It really is. Like people are like, I don't understand how you can be so happy. I'm like, well, I'm not happy in this moment, but I operate from a place of joy. Very different. And they're like, what do you mean you're not? And I was like, well, there's some things that are disappointing me right now that I wish were different, but we're going through it. My set point is joy. Like
Yes.
I know what I need to do to take care of myself, body, mind, and spirit
Yeah.
so that I can move through this. But yeah, I agree with you. This part is not comfortable right now.
Yes. And you
Not
have that
particularly
internal.
happy. The fact that you can say, I can be unhappy with something that's happening right now in my life, but I am still a joyful person is confusing to some. And yet it's very crystal clear to me now at this stage of my life.
Yes. It's that essence. It's your
Mhm.
essence from the inside out.
The light. We talk
Yes.
a lot about the light when you're lit from the inside out, right?
Yes. Yes. And when you meet somebody who's not operating from that place, you know it immediately.
Right. It's like a low vibe energy. You just
Dark, negative. Mhm.
pessimistic. Yeah.
Nothing works. Yes.
And it's interesting because you immediately feel this tinge of like, I wish they realized this is not what it's supposed to be or what you need to be going through. There is a choice.
Mhm.
It's hard to get there sometimes, right? Like we went through a lot of things to get to that place where we're like, oh, wait, I have a choice. I
And
can
it is a
decide to operate here. And the
mhm.
more I operate from this high vibration of joy, of positivity, of optimism, the more I have reasons to be joyful because it just keeps pulling in, right? You pull in more of that experience. And conversely, it's true. The more you operate at that low vibe, the more the world and the universe gives you reasons to validate that experience you're having.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's talk about joy specifically. When you're working with a client, when you're talking with somebody about let's cultivate more joy in your life, and you talked about the first step is honesty. Where are you now in your life? How do you work with them to begin to understand how to go about cultivating joy? So, honesty and an assessment of where you are, first step.
First step, it's self-awareness.
Mhm.
And in this, you know, lather, rinse, repeat model, this autopilot model, there isn't room for a lot of honesty. So it really does take a third party to come in and say, I need to kind of hit you with a few hard questions. And it usually only takes a few hard questions. I had a client last year who was a 7-figure earner running her own business, and she had all the things. And it only took a couple of questions with her before she realized she was so depleted and so tired and had no energy for anything that she needed a pause in her business. And she happened to have a gap in between clients, big clients. She does major government work, where she could actually step away for 6 weeks. And when I first posed that to her and I said, can you take this 6-week break? Terrified. Absolutely not. There's no way. I could never do that. I have to go do. And over the course of the next few weeks, when we met and this idea settled in with her and she became agreeable to it, it had to be her idea. Her whole life literally changed with a 6-week sabbatical.
So she went from total resistance, I cannot take a 6-week break because the world will come to an end and what will they think of me, to, oh my God, yeah, this is exactly what I need. I'm going to embrace it.
Yes.
So it's interesting. So she surrendered. So let's talk about surrender, because what you just described to me is somebody who had a great deal of resistance to the idea of taking the time needed to heal themselves and go on a journey, to recognizing that's exactly what they had to do. But it's a tough one, right? We feel like, oh my God, we're going to disappoint people. What will they think of me? If I take time off, they'll think I'm weak. They won't think I'm as great as what I do, all of these things. But what you just described to me was an incredibly important yet difficult task of surrender. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yes. So surrender isn't something that anybody can gift to anybody else. It is a process that happens for us on our own journey. But we can go through a process where surrender might be very likely. And with this particular client, she was so burnt out and so tired. And all of the things, all of the external trophies, money, title, clients, big house. She had just moved into this multi-million-dollar home. And
I mean, 7 figures, like that to me, I'm already like, wow,
yeah. But none of it was working.
And she wasn't operating from a place of joy despite all of this external success.
No, she had put on weight. She had lost, touch with her own self-care routine. She was a faithful woman. She'd lost touch with her faith. She was really just in this robotic autopilot mode, and she felt very flat. So in our work, one of my greatest gifts is clarity. When I'm working with a client, they can come to me with this whole big story and it's got all this shaboom around it, and he said and she said and this and that, but you don't understand because but I have this gift of clarity where I can really just hit the nail on the head with a couple of simple questions, seemingly simple, but they're profound and the timing is right. And in doing that with her, she surrendered and she said, I don't even know what's best for me right now. I have no idea. And so that's when some homework came in. Now, most executive women don't want homework because they're time starved and they say, I don't have time for homework. So it really became a journaling prompt that I said, do this before you go to sleep, 15 minutes before you go to sleep. And what came out of it was what she would do if she had 4 weeks off. And her life came to life, like to light. She came alive. She said, I would do this with my daughter. I would do this with my husband. Together, the 3 of us could go here. I could walk every morning. I could go back to my Bible study. I could do all of these things that were important to her for her life. And when she got back in touch with that, well, that well opened back up. the rocks started to be cleared away. And then she could much more easily make a decision that said, yes, I want to block this time.
It's really interesting because I think historical context of the word surrender is a sign of weakness. I surrender, I give up. And yet what we're talking about here is a very difficult transition of stopping the path that you're on and allowing the possibility of you don't know where your block is right now, and I'm going to give up the resistance for a minute
Mhm.
and allow that there is something beyond what I think I need to be doing that probably is what I should do next. And I think that that's the surrender. I think I have the answer to my life. I'm trying to figure it out on my own. I'm so self-reliant. I'm independent. I know what's best. I know how to do it. And you're fumbling through life and you realize that when you let go of that and you allow. So for me, like surrender a lot of the time, I think about it in the terms of allowing myself to reconnect with that. You talk about that divine wisdom that kind of comes from within, because we get so disconnected from what she said, I don't even know what's best for me right now. And I'm sure like part of the conversation was actually you do. You've just become so disconnected. You need to reconnect with what you know intuitively deep within you, but you spend no time connected to it. So let's spend some time reconnecting and it's going to come. It's going to be a wellspring, right?
That's right.
Comes
That's
from
exactly.
you. Didn't come from outside of her, it came from within her
Yes.
ultimately.
Yes. And when we switch from our head thinking to our heart thinking, we can change a lot about our life. That's where real surrender comes from. When I do some of my best thinking, I can get into a lot of trouble.
Right?
My best thinking got me into an eating disorder. That's how I coped with life for years.
Right.
And until I surrendered and said, I don't know what to do with this, but the pain of this is too great and I need help. I need somebody who can help me overcome this because what I'm doing is not working. And that was a very pivotal point in my adult life when I got help with an eating disorder.
It's almost amazing to me how when you go through the process, and I've shared this with you, the points of surrender in my life, at least one of them, where in that moment, solutions start to come from places you're like, where did that? I'd never seen, I was on a bus once and said, I surrender. I'm not at peace in my life. I'm feeling really out of sorts. And then boom, a sign from seemingly out of nowhere pops in. You're like, man, I have been resisting this for so long and boom, now I can move forward. I can move through this. And
Yeah,
I think that I really hope our listeners can really think of the term surrender as allowing. And it is a sign of strength, of recognizing that you have limitations in your thinking and you do need to allow for this possibility of the wisdom that you have within you that you're blocked from for one reason or another to reconnect to it and let it flow to you.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And we get so busy, we get so far away from that. Sometimes it's just taking some time to reconnect.
Yes. Yes.
All right, let's do a little bit of. I'm really curious about you because you are just first of all a fascinating person with so much light. You can feel it; it's palpable when you're around you. It excites me. What are some of the things you do to stay connected to this internal journey that we need to always be cognizant of? Because it's easy to get off track,
Yeah.
get busy. Even I'm sure in your new role, you get so busy and so excited. And even in all the goodness, we can get
Mhm.
pulled in the wrong way. I talked a little bit about this week. Here I am. I'm having this great experience with the podcast. And then boom, I'm tired. I'm worn down. Self-doubt starts creeping in.
Mhm.
And I had to step back and go, whoa, wait a minute, a little bit of grace here.
Yes.
Let's not beat ourselves up. Let's remember from where we're starting here and get back on track. So what are some of the things that Lisa Pine, the Joy CEO, does to stay connected, to stay rooted in this place of joy?
So I make sure that I have things to look forward to. So ever since my boys were little, every Friday night is family movie night. And even though that they're both in college now, my husband and I still have family movie night every Friday night, and we snuggle with our two dogs. So I am also an avid traveler. I love to travel. I am not a big fan of the cold New York winters. So if I have travel scheduled and planned and booked to get me through these winters to somewhere nice and warm and sunny, that is very joyful for me. I have that to look forward to. I also have simple things that bring me joy. I'll get out and hike with the dogs, even if it's cold and gray. And their joy, Lucy is only one, so she is full of energy and she just abounds freedom and happiness and joy. And she'll just go running through those woods like she's just free. And
There's nothing more joyful than a golden retriever. So let's
oh
just
my
put that
gosh.
out there. And Lucy and Annie are adorable golden retrievers. And I had a soft spot already because, as many of our listeners know, I hand raised two golden retrievers, and they're probably the best dogs on the planet.
Oh, the best. So, it's those things. I'm really grounded. I have several friend groups, kind of all over the country because I was such a gypsy and moved around in my corporate life so much. And so I'm really intentional about friendships and meeting up with friends. And now I'm really intentional about making an impact and being of service to women. That is my mission, to help women who are suffering in silence have an outlet, to change the trajectory of what could be more mundane into vibrancy and joy. And that gets me out of bed in the morning.
Isn't that exciting? We've gone from this achievement mode as young women in our lives to realizing that the joy is in service.
100% in service.
Joy is in service. I try to remind myself each day, getting up and say, how may I serve? Because in the service, the connection that you can find with people that will just appear that need to connect. And then you get to have that experience of human connection and have profound impact. It might be a moment for you, but you have no idea how meaningful it was for them.
Yeah.
And that's just such a gift.
Yeah.
Such a gift.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for spending this time with me. It has been nothing short of joyful. I've really enjoyed every minute of it. I really am excited about cultivating our friendship. I think we have a lot more to continue talking about. Too many serendipitous things in our lives to not. And I hope that you'll come back and talk to me again
Oh
soon.
my gosh, it was so my pleasure, and I cannot wait.
Excellent.
Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please comment, like, and subscribe to this channel to continue to receive content that inspires. Let us know what resonates and what you'd like to hear more about. You are here for a purpose. It's time for you to step into that purpose, become the most authentic version of you, and start living, truly living your extraordinary life. It's never too late. And in fact, we're just getting started.